just published an article about the Boston Athletic Association having to keep tradition in mind in searching for a new sponsor for the Boston Marathon. The Boston Marathon lost its primary sponsor, um, and this also might lead to a new name change, with John Hancock departing as the race's primary principal sponsor after the next race in April. As you can see in this logo up here, the name is just the Boston Marathon, and it's sponsored by John Hancock. John Hancock actually doesn't have their name in any part of the race. They just have the unicorn for the name. So the tradition of the Boston Marathon is being able to stay on until now. Since they're losing John Hancock, they're likely going to have to find a replacement for a sponsor. The Boston Athletic Association may be headed for a very real crossroads between the event's long-term financial security and a tweak to its 135-year-old name. Johnny Hancock was very kind to the Boston Marathon in not tweaking their name because they know their tradition behind it, and said they just had their logo appear. But in looking for a new sponsor for the race, they might have to compromise their name if they want the race to be able to continue. They might have to compromise for a brand that might want to commercialize the name a little more in their favor. The last time the Boston Athletic Association actually went on the hunt for a primary partner was 37 years ago. And then when the race was losing its luster, the presidents of the Boston Athletic Association feared that they would have sponsors such as McDonald's and Coors that would be actually commercializing the race, making it maybe the McDonald's Boston Marathon or the Coors Boston Marathon, and losing the actual real part of the race and making it more commercialized. Then John Hancock actually saved the day, with them actually being able to not actually include their name, but just using their logo. And the Boston Athletic Association likely will be looking for a partner that will be willing to do the same, a brand that's maybe not as well known and doesn't need as much name recognition, but is willing to sponsor as long as they get their logo on the Boston Marathon. So my big key takeaways from this article. 3 potential sponsors, the article was saying, would likely be partners: Moderna, State Street Bank, and Vertex. All these companies aren't very commercial. They're not looking to sell to the average customer like a brand like maybe Dunkin' or McDonald's, or even, like they said, Coors. Those are brands that are going to want to put their name in the actual race, but when looking for potential suitors for this race, they're going to try and find suitors that don't need their names in the actual race, but could just include their logo and find other ways to advertise it instead. That would be the ideal partner for the Boston Marathon, and then they really want to look for a partner that's very similar to John Hancock in the way they do business and sponsorship. The Boston Athletic Association, it also should just take the longest term deal they can get from the maximum amount of money with the least amount of commercial penetration. They had John Hancock for about 37 years, which is a very long time for a race, but they need to think for the future. And if they can find a partner similar to John Hancock who's willing to not have their name penetrate, or their brand penetrate into the Boston Marathon name, this would be very ideal. And if they can find someone like that, they need to lock that deal down for long term, because they don't want to have to rethink it in a few years once their partnership ends, like the one John Hancock has now. They want a long-term deal so they can keep up this tradition of the Boston Marathon name and not making it something more commercial, and that might take away from the seriousness of the race and the tradition. So yeah.